Great. Ashley just dropped in a handout that we're going to use today. So if you have the opportunity to pull that down, please do. You don't have to print it out, but maybe just have it up in Word or have it to refer to and just use a regular piece of paper. We're not too formal here, so yeah, but just want you to have a little visual to follow along with, because sometimes you'll want to look at something different than the slide. So good morning, Rhonda. Yay. Yay.
Yeah, important to you because you work with someone not aware or needing to learn some leadership skills. Definitely some room for growth there.
Oh yeah. Good. It's good to have folks. Are most people back from last month, or are you new to me and our emotional intelligence series? Drop that in the chat. Let us know. Back from last month. Woohoo! Yay! Goody. Hopefully you tagged a friend and know that you can tag friends and they can come for free. Isn't that exciting? Yay! Good to have you. Good to have you back. Good. And Ashley, I'll look to you to tell me when you feel like, well, gosh, we've got 2 minutes till the top of the hour. Fabulous. All right.
People returning. I popped the handout again into the chat in case you missed it, just because a lot of people are. If you aren't able to access it, it could be the way that you logged into Zoom, but I email everybody at the end of the session to make sure you have access to the recording and materials. So I will make sure that that also gets included in that email in case you can't get it right now.
Yeah, and it's not like super critical, so don't feel like you're missing out on anything. It'll be okay. You'll be just fine. Welcome back, and welcome to the new folks. I'm excited to have you. And if you like today, know that there's a recording of last month's session that you could listen to. And last month, we just had an intro to emotional intelligence. And so today, we're going a little bit deeper on self-awareness and self-management, because emotional intelligence usually starts with us as we look inward and think about and experience our emotions. So excited to have you all here today. And I think the other warning I want to share with people is we're going to break you up into groups of 3 people, triads, about 25, 30 minutes in to the session to do an exercise. So if you think you're going to, not be able to join, it might be good to log out at that time. Otherwise, we'll throw you in a group and you won't be there. The other thing could happen is that if we throw you in a group and other people aren't there and you don't have enough to make it happen, then just come back to the main room and we'll create a new group for you. So Doug Parker is asking, where do we locate the recording? Ashley, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so it's on my YouTube channel. I send out the recording at the end of this session, and what it will do is also connect you to my whole channel that has the last one. So I will make sure that you have it. It would have went out in an email last month, but if you weren't here last month, you would have just missed it. So I'll make sure that both recordings are attached in the email I send out after today.
Awesome. Thank you.
It looks like we can probably get rolling at the top of the hour here, and we'll make sure to adjust as people start to log in. But I just want to make sure make sure to keep yourselves on mute during the presentation. But when we pop into the breakout rooms, I really encourage you to turn on your camera, turn on your microphone. Don't worry if you've got hat hair or bed hair or anything like that. We just want to connect and make sure you see faces as you're working together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I think, when we go to those breakouts, and even just here right now, your participation in the chat helps me understand that I'm not just talking to my laptop and being a little crazy here in my house in Boulder. So please use the chat to tell me what you're thinking or feeling about what we're saying here, and jump in with comments. After last month's session, I had a couple amazing people reach out to me who were like, yeah, I'm doing work in neuroscience and emotional intelligence. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So please share the knowledge that you have, because we learn from our community. So, everyone's a teacher and everyone's a student. I am a student as well. I don't claim to have all this figured out. I don't claim to know all the answers, but I want to share what I know with you that I found valuable and useful, and hopefully you'll find that as well. And then we can build on each other's knowledge and experience. So let's kick it off. Welcome everyone to the workshop today on emotional intelligence. We're focused on self-awareness and self-management. A few logistics for you. Ashley has muted all your audio just in case you have a dog or a kid in music class or whatever it might be going on behind you or around you. But we do want you to know how to take yourself off mute. We want you to join in via the Zoom features. I am going to be asking for some volunteers when we come back from our breakout to share that experience. So we're going to either have you waving frantically into your camera or using that raise hand feature that's in the participant panel. So when we get there, we'll take a look at that. And I see that everyone has the opportunity to be able to raise their hand. So we'll look there for volunteers. Also use that chat box to share your comments to oh, Linda, fabulous. Actually, Linda, if you could find that article in the next couple of minutes and drop it in the chat. We had someone asking about autistic individuals with autism. So I would love for you to share that with our community here. So thank you, thank you. So this is awesome seeing the chat box going, yay, dropping your questions, and maybe just put the word question and then colon and then what the question is, and Ashley will be monitoring that. I'll be monitoring that as well so that we can make sure we get your questions answered. Anything we don't get answered in the session today, I commit to finding an answer for you of some sort as best as I can. So I'll either crowdsource it right here in the moment, or we will, I commit to researching it and coming back to you with an answer. Awesome. If you need any help, please contact Ashley, or she's listed as the host. And that's kind of the key logistics. All right. Okay. So hi, everyone. I'm Jahnavi Brenner. Good to see you again, if I'm seeing you again from last month, and good to meet you if we haven't had the opportunity to meet. We've got about 157 people today on the call, and I'm super excited to be here with you. I recently launched a leadership coaching and HR consulting practice called The Vivid Leader. And my mission is to create workplaces where leaders lead with confidence and ease, and all employees want to give their best work. So, that's really about leaders creating an environment, and then HR as a function in the organization, creating the right systems and processes for the organization to be successful, and for all employees to feel valued and want to give their best work to that organization. I do mostly one-on-one coaching, although I am starting up some group offerings. And then I do consulting, as I mentioned, in employee engagement, diversity, equity, inclusion, talent development, team effectiveness, et cetera. And that's kind of why I got interested in emotional intelligence. I'm certified in the EQI 2.0, which is the Emotional Quotient Intelligence Assessment, that you can assess your skills on 15 different emotional intelligence skills. You can assess yourself on 15 different skills, and also have other raters assess you too in a 360 version. For folks that are interested in that, just send me a message if you are. And what usually happens is to take the assessment, and then we do an hour debrief to talk about their results and how they can apply their strengths, and kind of dive into their development opportunities as they build their skills in this space. It's a lot of fun, and usually a really positive experience for people. They're like, wow, I didn't know that about myself. And, it's just a really good experience to kind of learn a little bit more about you. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to do three things. We're going to first talk a little bit about self-awareness, and then we're going to discuss some approaches for self-management, and then we're going to give you some practice. Okay, so absolutely, we will have time for practice, and I'm excited about this because I built in a lot of time into this workshop, because we're going to get a little hands-on. We're going to share a little bit about ourselves. I'm going to start. I'm going to be vulnerable with you about some things, and we'll go from there. So thank you, Linda, for dropping in the chat this article about hiring from the autism spectrum. I can't see the whole title, but I know we had some questions last time about that, so I'm just downloading it right now. Awesome. Okay, so this is our agenda. I'm super excited. Let's get going. And what we're first going to do is a little bit of personal self-reflection, okay? So what I'd like you all to do is to make a list, and you can use that handy dandy handout that Ashley put in the chat, or just use a piece of paper. Like, don't get too technical. Don't worry if you're missing out on the handout. Just use a piece of paper and write a list of things that you have not achieved yet. And so these can be personal or professional goals, maybe some desires. Maybe they're things you started but you haven't finished, or maybe they're like big, huge goals and dreams that you have. And you may want to think about them as structures that you haven't built yet in your life with the Legos of your life. And so that's why I have that cute little graphic there of Legos. You should see my living room because it's 1/3 of it's taken up by my kids' Legos. So before you dive in, I wanted to share a few of my life. So for me, here's a sample. We're 9 days away from Thanksgiving, and I don't have a plan yet for a COVID-friendly approach to Thanksgiving that involves my extended family. That is something I have not yet achieved, and it's pretty important to me. I started knitting a sweater about 8 years ago when I was pregnant, and my kid is turning 9 next week, and I haven't finished the darn sweater. So it's in a box, and I've seen it, and I've looked at it and all the other things. Ashley actually has seen the sweater too, but I haven't finished that. I haven't achieved it. We have a basement an apartment in our basement that's been vacant since September, which is a little troubling because we use that rent to kind of get to our mortgage. And it's been vacant a couple months. And so I have not yet achieved renting this basement, getting this rented. And then another thing is really having a full book of coaching clients. I just launched my practice a few months ago, and so I don't have kind of my full capacity met yet. So I've shared a little bit about me and my things I haven't achieved yet. Hopefully that sparks some ideas for you. So take a few minutes here to jot down some personal and professional things in your life that you have not yet achieved. And if you feel comfortable, drop 1 or 2 of them in the chat to share with the group, and that'll help other people get sparked some ideas. And I will set a little timer here for about 1.5 minutes. And so you guys go ahead and do that. Wonderful things coming in the chat. You're being so honest and thoughtful here. Send people I love a card telling them how thankful I am. Paying off my student loans, finishing my master's degree, joining the Peace Corps, finishing my novel, taking Spanish lessons, publication, cataloging my music, writing a book. Oh, it's fabulous.
I love the propose to girlfriend. I'm all a fan. Do it.
Oh. Okay, we've got about 10 more seconds here. So make sure you got some of these written down on a piece of paper because we're going to come back to this list. Or typed up on that document. Multiple ways to do it. All right. Okay, so let's put that little list aside and let's move on. We'll come back to that. So as we think about self-awareness and self-management when it comes to emotional intelligence, the first question to answer is always why. Why does this matter? And when I think about self-awareness, the more self-awareness we have, it enables more self-management. So when we're aware of what's going on inside ourselves, when we have more light to be able to see what's going on in our head, in our heart, in our bodies, we're then able to manage ourselves. And what we mean by manage ourselves is to manage our reaction and to consciously choose a reaction versus simply responding in the moment. So self-management is really about choosing our response. And that might be turning things up, it might be turning things down, it might be choosing to react, it might be choosing not to react in the moment. It might be a choice of words, it might be a choice of tone, etc. All of those things are part of the self-management process. So awareness actually helps us get to self-management, and that's the link between the two. And today I want to share with you one skill that is likely going to make us more self-aware of our emotions and give us the tools we need to manage ourselves. And this skill comes from a guy named Nick Wignall. And I don't expect you to know Nick Wignall because I just discovered him probably a few months ago as I've been learning and building my knowledge base on emotional intelligence. He's a clinical psychologist, a writer, a teacher, and a podcaster. And I've got his website address down here at the bottom, but it's also at the bottom of the handout. And his whole focus is all about your emotional health comes from good habits, not just nice ideas. So he talks about how to build really good habits as it relates to emotional intelligence. And thank you, Ashley, for dropping his website in the chat. He's amazing. I don't even know him, but I'm like loving everything he creates. So hopefully you'll find his style and approach useful too. So we already know when we met last time, we talked a little bit about how we really do want to make sure we feel that full range of emotions, and we're able to articulate emotions by leveraging a feelings wheel to really kind of help us go deeper than I'm feeling sad to, I'm feeling alone or I'm feeling rejected. And that's kind of the way I'm feeling my sadness. And so using a feelings wheel can help us get to that. Also, we know that we want to experience those emotions. We don't want to hide them or stuff them or shove them under the rug or deep in the closet, because these emotions will come out, and they always keep coming out. They're kind of like a beach ball that you're trying to hold underwater, but they just keep popping up. And sometimes they pop up when we least expect it, or at times when we don't want to have an emotional reaction. So we know that some people are better able to control their emotions, and Nick believes that it all comes down to habits. So this article that I took a screenshot of here, 7 skills that will make you emotionally strong. This article is pretty amazing. And the first skill that Nick talks about is metacognition. And he describes it quite simply as thinking about your thinking. And so more specifically, thinking about your thinking is the ability to be aware and assess what's going on in your mind, thoughts, emotions, beliefs, moods, expectations, and self-talk. And the reason he wants us to become more aware of that is because when we become aware of that, we then can make choices. When we ignore our mind, the more we ignore our mind, the more our behaviors become reactions rather than choices. So if we can pause and observe what's happening in our mind, we give ourselves the opportunity to act intentionally and purposefully. So we want to shift our focus from like trying to control the emotion or not experience the emotion to actually get curious about it and kind of ask ourselves some questions about that emotion. And we did some of that last time, but today we're going to go a little bit deeper. So how many of you kind of remember this cycle that we talked about last time? And if it looks familiar to you, how our thoughts impact our feelings, our emotions, and then the actions we take, just drop something in the chat that's like, ding, 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 I remember this. Oh yeah, it's coming back, Jahnavi, and that has changed my life, because I told everyone that changed my life, and hopefully you remember. Great. So really briefly, I told the story about a client who was feeling really scared about having to make a presentation at their job. And then what was happening is they started to procrastinate because they were scared. So they like sat on the couch under a fuzzy blanket and just didn't do the work they needed to do. And what was at the root of that was a thought about not being good enough. Like, who am I to be called an expert on this? And why did I get chosen for this? Like, I don't think I'm qualified. I'm not good enough. And then we talked about, well, what's a different thought that this person could have about being asked for this special project and having to do a report and present it in front of a bunch of people? And what they thought about, oh, fabulous, love the chat, awesome, it's blowing up. And Terry has just dropped in an awesome podcast by Brene Brown. Fabulous, thank you, Terry. What the new thought we thought about was, gosh, my manager asked me to do this because I'm pretty good at this stuff. Like, I've got stuff to share. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I could go get some help from a colleague or a book or a resource, or maybe someone at a different university or institution that works in the same department that could probably help me. And then when I think that, my client said, well, now I'm excited and I'm proud and I'm feeling determined that I'm going to kick this project's butt and do a good job. And finally, that moved my client to action, where they were like, let's get to work. I want to be creative. I'm going to go ask for help. And now all of this stuff is starting to move in a better direction and in a movement towards action. So, and the key conclusion we came up with then was, if you want a different outcome, try a new feeling and thought, right? So today we're going to focus on this thoughts area and really think about our thinking. we're going to focus our attention on different types of thoughts that we can have so that we can start to identify these thoughts in ourselves and also other people. And when we identify these thoughts and then we kind of break the cycle and come up with a different thought, that'll help us drive a different emotional response and then action. So that's our intent for today. Who's excited about that? Give me a little something in the chat if that sounds good to you. Ooh, I see Ashley going like this. I love that too. I got to get more people that are on camera on my screen. Okay, I see you, Linda. I see you, Anna. You look excited. Woohoo, Trish. All right, Aaron's in too. Okay, awesome. Okay, so this sounds good. I'm excited. So let's first talk about assumptions. So as we think about our thinking, it's so funny because like I always think that sounds so meta, and then the real scientific word for it is metacognition, right? So it's thinking about our thinking. There are a few types of thoughts that can have a particularly strong impact on our emotions and therefore our actions. And the first is assumptions, okay? You all remember that we've been taught, like, when you assume, you make a out of you and me, right? Who remembers that? I see a little head nod and a couple chuckles. Yeah, we learned that, like, I think I was like in 6th grade when I learned that. So it's been many years. And I did a little look up on that one because I was like, where does that even come from? And thank goodness we have Wikipedia, because Wikipedia told me this was credited to Jerry Belson, who was a writer for the show The Odd Couple. And I have never watched The Odd Couple, but I do know it's quite famous. So any of you, oh, Long Kiss Goodnight. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's something I've got to watch this upcoming holiday. So awesome. But I think the original credits might go to Jerry Belson, at least per Wikipedia. And if you disagree, I encourage you to go edit that Wikipedia page and fix it up for the rest of us. Okay, so let's talk about what assumptions are, because we know they can lead us down a bad path, but let's get really clear about a definition of assumptions. So, and if you're playing along with the handout, there's a spot to write this down in the handout. So the definition of an assumption for our purpose today is it is a thought that because something happened in the past, it automatically, certainly is going to happen again, okay? Something happened in the past and it automatically and certainly is going to happen again. And yes, I love Rhodes has dropped in something from the book, The 4 Agreements. Agreement number 2 is do not make any assumptions. Brilliant, brilliant advice. So we're going to kind of dive into that today because you'll see the challenge with making assumptions. So yeah, we all make assumptions, right? Like my daughter is stomping around and I'm making an assumption that, you know, she hates me or she's just an ornery child or all the other things, all those kinds of assumptions I can make about what's driving her behavior. It's pretty darn hard to stop ourselves from making assumptions. So let's examine that a little bit further. The reason why it's so hard is because they're so personal, right? They're based on our own experience. Like I've lived through this before. Like I know what's going to happen. I read this book before. I was actually a main character in this book. It's all going to go like this. And sometimes it's something we witnessed. Sometimes it's something we participated in. It doesn't matter. We have these assumptions based on our experience. And they can, you know, help us or they can hinder us. You know, if we have an assumption about how something's going to go and maybe we've been challenged in that area before, we might be held back by our assumption because we think it's not going to work for us, or we think we're not going to do a good job, or we think we're going to fail. We've actually failed before we even start trying. And then even if we do start trying, we sometimes move in a counterproductive way. And so the advice here is really not to hold too tightly to your assumptions because we can miss out on a whole world of possibilities. So when we look back at this cycle, right, assumptions are a version of our thoughts, right? That's something we're thinking up here in our head. We've got this assumption up here. And it's a thought that affects our feelings or emotions, which in turn impacts our actions. So let's just say, here's where I'm going to ask you to get in that chat. Let's just say we get a calendar invite from our manager. Let's say it popped up like in 5 minutes. It's going to pop up on your computer. And your manager sends you an impromptu one-on-one meeting for tomorrow. How many of you ever had that happen to you? Like, just give me a, yeah, okay. So what's an assumption you could make about that meeting for tomorrow? Put it in the chat. Oh, someone's got one tomorrow. All right, tell me am I in trouble? Panic, someone's in trouble. Here's some of these assumptions. Give me some more assumptions. What did I do wrong? It's another last minute meeting with no notice. I'm getting a raise, oh, or I'm getting fired. I've got a new project. We've got an urgent issue. My expertise is needed. I'm getting praised. I'm getting an assignment. I'm getting fired. Like, oh my God, my emotions are going crazy right here just reading the chat. And hopefully you're experiencing that too, right? Like we have these range of assumptions about what that meeting could mean, from I'm getting an award, I'm getting a raise, you know, I'm going to be on a stage, you know, getting some praise, to I'm getting fired. So no wonder, right, that these different assumptions we're making in our head could lead to different feelings, which would then lead to different actions. So when we think about, you know, getting a raise or getting an award, let's go there. What's the feeling or emotion that we're going to feel when we think that, when we make the assumption about getting a raise? Put that in the chat for me. Excitement. Yeah, excitement. Yes. We might feel a little proud. Yes. Relief, surprise, feeling valued. Exactly. Feeling appreciated, right? And when we feel valued and appreciated and excited at work, how do we perform? Better. Yes, we perform better. We perform well. We perform at our peak level. We perform with more confidence. We're motivated. We are off the chart when we feel valued and excited and appreciated at work. Exactly. And
what
then
was the
if
scenario?
we were thinking,
Sorry.
yeah,
I didn't hear what
yeah,
you said.
thank you. Yeah, the scenario is we get a message from our boss right now that we have an impromptu meeting tomorrow, a one-on-one meeting with our boss tomorrow. And it's like, hey, can I meet you, you know, for 20 minutes, Jahnavi, at 10 o'clock tomorrow? Please clear your calendar. That's like what's it's sent with. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank
you. Okay, perfect, awesome. Okay, so yeah, when we have this good feeling, we feel like we're getting an award, we're getting praise, we feel really good and we feel respectable and we're excited about new challenges and things like that. And oh my God, Chris, this is awesome. Yay, you had this situation yesterday and it turned out wonderfully. That's so fun to hear. Awesome. Okay. So let's say we make the assumption that we're getting fired. What's the feeling that we have? What's the emotion that we have if we feel like tomorrow we're going to get notified that we're going to get fired? Crying, dread, fear, yikes, anxiety, worry, confusion. Why? Pit in the stomach, anxious. Yeah. Why put in any effort? Yeah, that goes right to the actions, right? Like, my work's done here. I'm getting canned tomorrow. You know, I'm just going to tidy this up. I'm going to start getting my personal finances order. I'm going to start polishing up my resume. We stop getting focused on our job if we feel that way. So assumptions are super duper powerful. Who feels like they're powerful? Just give me a yes in the chat if you're like, wow, I had no idea. Yes, okay, awesome. Thank you, Coral, for the hand wave. You happen to be on my screen, so I'm excited to see that. Yes, okay. All right, so it's crazy. These things happen in an instant, right? Like it's not like you have to think about it. Like it's just boom, automatic, and you have the thought and then you have the feeling. So what do we do? How do we challenge our assumptions? So what I want us to do first is go back to that list of the things you have not yet achieved, okay? Remember that list? We did that little self-reflection in the beginning and you wrote down things you haven't achieved. It was wonderful things. And I want you to look at that list and ask yourself the question, which ones on this list might be due to an assumption I'm making? And put a little A or a big A next to those items on the list that might be not yet achieved because of an assumption that you're making. Perhaps it's an assumption you're making about how difficult the task is. Like writing a book, whew, that could be pretty hard, right? And you might be thinking, gosh, this is going to be so hard, or this is going to require so much time, or I need to have better writing skills, or I need an editor already, or all the other things, right? These are assumptions you might be making about that. Maybe it's about what resources you need, or maybe it's about how the thing should be achieved. Some assumption about that. So take a look at your list and then just review it. And when you're done, type a done in the chat. And hopefully you'll find one or two that you think might not be achieved yet because of an assumption. Oh, you guys are fast. Almost all of them. Okay. Oh, this is so exciting because if you have some that have assumptions, I'm so excited because you're probably your life is going to change after this call today. This is going to be amazing. How fun. Okay. So for me, right, I told you like the first thing on my list was about Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is seriously my favorite holiday of the whole year. Okay, I shared at the very beginning, I'm a non-practicing Hindu. My parents are Hindu, so like Christmas sucks in our house, right? Because my parents are like, why do you buy gifts? And they're from India too, so they're like, your gifts are a bunch of books, because you need to study harder to be a good human in this world. When my sister and I were growing up, so Christmas was never really a great holiday. Thanksgiving was the best because in the beginning, my parents are immigrants. We didn't really know what we were doing to cook Thanksgiving. So we'd go to people's houses. They would invite us. And it was like so much fun. It was just like a bunch of kids and like family and like just laughter and, amazing food. And it was like appetizers and then sides and a main dish and dessert. And then there was more. And you could just do what you wanted to do the whole day. And it was just fun. And football was on. And like, once I started drinking alcohol, like you could have a cocktail anytime you wanted. Like it was just, the rules were just out the window for how to behave at a dinner party. So much fun. So for me, Thanksgiving is a big deal. And now as someone who hosts Thanksgiving, I love bringing family and friends together. And I always invite friends who don't have a place to go. Last year, we had a Belgian family at our table for people who, are expats from Belgium and, they don't have family to celebrate with, but we brought them in and we had a great time. And it was like 15 people at our house. And I was cooking for like 3 days and stressed and all the other things, but it was super fun. And this year, it's not going to happen. So my assumption about Thanksgiving this year is that it's going to suck. It's going to suck because I have a mother who's older. I have a mother-in-law with a kidney transplant and super highly compromised. I have a sister-in-law in Denver with a cute little kid who's been going to daycare. And then we've got 3 of us in our house. And my kid, her school just got locked down now permanently from in-person schooling. And so now she's kind of less exposed, but I'm like, we can't bring all these 4 households together if we're going to follow the rules, and it's going to suck. And so that thought about Thanksgiving sucking is making me feel really resigned. It's making me feel helpless. It's making me feel hopeless about my favorite holiday of the entire year. And as I think about the actions, it's like holding me back from making a plan. Usually I have a spreadsheet where I have cut and pasted all the recipes that I want to try for Thanksgiving. Like the spreadsheet, seriously, it's in Google Drive and I share it with my family and I'm like, please vote. And I will make whatever you want or whatever gets the most votes. Like I am all about this. And it's super planned and super organized and crazy over the top. I haven't done any of that and we're 9 days away from Thanksgiving. So I realize the impact of this, right? So now that I've shared that example with you, I'd love to hear from someone who's willing to go off mute and talk about an item on their list that might not yet be achieved because of an assumption they're making. So if you're willing to do that, in the participant panel, throw up your hand. And you don't have to show your video, but it'd be awesome if you did. So you go to the participant panel, you click on participants, then you get to see all 177 people. Oh my gosh, we've got a couple volunteers. We've got Ruben and Pam. So Ruben, I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to try to find you too, so we can look at each other. So if you could take yourself off mute, and everyone,
Sure.
I want to first, let's talk about how we're going to treat Ruben here. Okay, we're going to be super supportive because we don't know what Ruben's showing up with. So let's be really supportive, really kind, and let's maintain confidentiality here too, because for Ruben, it might be Thanksgiving, but it might be something else. And so let's create a really nice container for Ruben to share freely here. So Ruben, thank you first for volunteering. I'm excited to see you and hear about something on your list. So can you share with us what's on your list that's not yet achieved?
So I think the biggest one for me is probably earning a master's degree. And I've looked at that. I've been working on that. I've been thinking about it. It's something I know I need to do. And it's something that I've been talking about and contemplating for 15 years now, right? Ever since I got out of college, got my bachelor's degree, I'm like, I'm going to get my master's. And it's kind of shifted over time as to what that would be. I think the big assumption I have is not enough time. I'm married, I have a family, all these other things going on. Now, I know that's not true. I've worked in education for a while. I've promoted and seen other people in my kind of situation actually go and achieve their master's degree. And I'm always envious of that. But it always seems I make the assumptions I don't have enough time. The money's not in place. The time, things just aren't right. I'm starting a new job. This isn't so. A lot of these type of assumptions are excuses that I put into play. So that's kind of my situation, and I'm still in that same boat today. I'm a year and a half into a new job, and I'm starting to play with this idea again: is can I do it? How do I go about doing it? And dealing with some of those. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have.
Yeah. Thank you, Ruben. That is, I bet there's probably like 10 other people on the call who are feeling that about something, that they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they have an assumption about that. And so thank you for sharing and being so honest, and the chat's lighting up with all sorts of people giving you some cheers there for diving in and being first on our call today. So let's talk about how we might challenge these assumptions. So, sometimes these assumptions are based on something that's happened in the past. So Ruben, is there anything that happened in the past that you're thinking this is connected to, or is it just it's really the time, it sounds like, and the money?
It's a good question. I don't know. Education's I feel like I'm not the smartest one in my family. I have several siblings who have gone on, gotten their masters, and I look at my parents, and my dad has 5 different degrees or 7 different, depending on whether you're looking at associates and masters, bachelors, what have you. So education's always been an important thing in my family, but I've not been the smartest one in my family ever. So I think some of my assumption comes from that is, can I do it? Do I have the intelligence to complete a master's degree? Does that get to your point?
Yeah, absolutely. It's not necessarily tied to this, but it sheds so much more color on what's going on. You're having a thought of, am I smart enough to do this? And maybe the assumption underneath that, and you tell me how true this is you have to be smart to get a master's.
Yeah, I think that's the underlying issue here.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, it may be.
Yeah. So let me ask you about that assumption. And I'm just going to reveal this here, these kind of ways to challenge the assumption. But how smart do you need to be to get a master's? Because when you're getting a master's, aren't you building your education? Let me understand that a little bit more.
I don't know. It's for me, I guess it's kind of tough to explain. There's different types of intelligence. Book smarts is not something that's great for me. I'm better with people. I'm very creative when it comes to those kind of things. I got my bachelor's degree in graphic design, but now working in marketing. So there's a lot more, there's a shift in some of those things. And where do you get your master's degree? And that's been a debate for a while. Do I get a BA, MBA? Do I get a master's of marketing? Do I get an MFA? Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And some of that has not really been clear, I guess, in my life as to what I want to do. I think I've kind of settled on the marketing side of things. I really do enjoy that. And I've got a lot of experience in it. And I think there's a lot that I can bring to the table from there, from real life experience. But when it comes to book smarts, that's not my cup of tea. That's really sitting down, reading a book, gathering the information from it. That's something that I struggle with. And I know that I'm probably going to have to do this online. This is not something I can take a break from my job and my family and do separately. So it's something I'm going to have to do online. And I've taken some online courses in the past, and they've been a struggle because there's a lot more of that sitting down and managing yourself and doing a lot of reading and gleaning the information from those readings. And that's where I struggle a lot. So, lots of elements playing into this. Smart enough. I think I could do it. I imagine that once I actually get rolling and everything's good there, I'll be fine. I have the capacity to do it. It's just going to be, my assumption is it's going to be a struggle. This is going to be a very big struggle. And I'm not sure that I'm quite up for it yet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. So Ruben, and what you shared there as you expanded on this is you addressed kind of the first one, right? I've taken some online courses before and they didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
So, the way we challenge that assumption is that we ask, well, why does it have to be that same outcome again? And I'm sure things have changed in how online courses are delivered. I'm sure things have changed in even, how we consume knowledge from books has changed, right? Like my kid is on YouTube all day long looking at things instead of reading anything. And I'm like, wow, maybe she doesn't really need to be a good reader because YouTube is there. She could just watch a video, right, to consume and learn. So it's challenging, why must what happened in the past absolutely and certainly apply here again, right? And then, one of the other ideas is staying in the present. So knowing that it's, or assuming it's going to be a struggle. What's the very first step to take? Let's stay in the present. Let's not fast forward into that future that, we've painted a pretty crappy picture of the future for ourselves. Like I painted a horrible Thanksgiving dinner where I'm like sad and crying. And, I don't know how bad this struggle is going to be for you, but it's, using the word struggle means that it's going to be painful, right? So staying in the present, what's the very first step? It sounds like you had some questions about, well, what kind of degree do I even want to look at? Maybe that's the first step. I don't know for sure if that's the first step of what to do. And then as time went on, you were like, well, I probably could do this. I'm probably smart enough to do this. Like I heard that in what you said, and that I'll probably be able to find the time to do it too. In the beginning you said it's time and money, but then later you're like, gosh, it's probably the format and the modality. So, I'm kind of curious, and as you take this forward, you'll probably think about, well, which one is it out of all of those? Which one's the most important one? Which one's the most challenging thing to overcome? And then the last point on the slide is about leveraging the past for learning. So you've completed your bachelor's degree in an area of study, and now you're working in a totally different area, which is pretty darn amazing and cool. And like, what did you learn from when you went to school? What were your success strategies then that you could bring forward? And what are your success strategies at work? Like, I'm thinking at work, you have to get knowledge from books and different resources. And I'm thinking at work that there's things that take longer that you didn't anticipate. And at work right now, you're dealing with family and, work and other things in your life, kind of pulling on your time. How could you leverage those experiences that you have right now to find your strengths that could help you on this new path forward? What are you thinking about that, Ruben?
Oh, my head's swimming right now. I think you're right. I've kind of settled on a track, and part of it has been, I think my holdup has been, what do I really want to do? Which direction do I really want to go? Straight out of college, it was the MFA. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, and I actually started working on it 5 years ago, getting prerequisites out of the way and stuff, it was an MBA. And now as I look at things and being so engaged in the educational space and understanding how that works and how the industry has changed, I'm not sure the MBA is the right direction for me, just because it's so everybody's got an MBA. Everybody's got one. So it doesn't really set you apart. So how do I set myself apart, make myself unique? And so I think I've settled on the path. I've started once or twice and run into issues and had to stop. I think really, and as people have kind of pointed out in the chat, I just, step number one, identify a program I want to be in. And I think that's the master's program, and just start looking into those and pursuing those masters in marketing and focus on that. I think it's really going to come down to taking the first step, and am I ready to do that yet?
Yeah, absolutely. These are big questions, right? So like, we're not going to solve this in like a 5-minute fishbowl here, but thank you so much for being willing to share this experience. And for how many of you, like I'm seeing the chat light up, I'm not getting a chance to read it all, but how many of you are seeing some of, these assumptions, right, that you're making, and how valuable would challenging those assumptions with these approaches be for you? So if you could just drop that in the chat. I'm going to try to find my chat window. Here we go. Oh my God, Ruben, you've got 1,000 recommendations in here and all sorts of people cheering for you. This is awesome. Yeah. Good. So yeah, so I want to ask everyone else who kind of found something on their list these ways of challenging assumptions, how useful is that for you? Yeah, time, money, and needed experiences are biggies. Exactly. Still processing. Yeah. Well, it's amazing, right? Because we just sat there and in 3 minutes kind of talked with Ruben, challenging his assumption about money and time, and then raised another question of like, well, what do I want to do with this degree? And what degree should I go get? Right. And so that is going to be maybe a place to focus instead of worrying about the money and the time. Who cares? Let's go figure out the other part, which kind of takes him to action versus inaction. So really interesting. So, okay, thank you very much. I hope you're all seeing that. Start with the end in mind. Yes, exactly. Yes. Some of those. Who was that? Is it Covey? Yeah, Ben Franklin and Covey. Yeah, exactly. Okay, awesome. Okay, so we see this, right? Thinking about our thinking lets us manage ourselves to have a different emotion and maybe a different action and possibly a different outcome. So Ruben, I think you might be spending a couple days next week during the holiday thinking about, what would I do with a master's degree and what master's degree should it be? And I see you nodding, so I'm guessing, yeah, that's kind of cool. We put some new ideas in your head. That's pretty awesome. Okay, so let's talk about another way of thinking that we have, which is interpretation. So again, thank you, Ruben. I appreciate that. Going off mute and being real with us. It's fun. Okay, so let's talk about interpretations, another way that we can think about our thinking. So this involves interpretations that we make of the experiences that we're having in life. So an interpretation is an opinion that we create about an event, a situation, or an experience, okay? It's a quick story based on our beliefs, based on our experience, and we unconsciously look for evidence to support it. And then when we find that evidence, we're like, look, see, I was right. Oh my gosh, I'm right. Yep, I was right. Look at me. And for those of you who know about unconscious bias, you know, we're learning a lot about bias in organizations and workplaces and how we think, especially if you're doing any work in diversity inclusion. Unconscious bias is a really big piece, and there's an unconscious bias called confirmation bias, where we actually seek out data to support a thought we already have in our head, and then we're like, yep, oh, look at me, I'm so brilliant, I found that piece of data that supports this idea. So maybe in the case about grad school, it's going to cost a lot of money, and then we start looking at programs and we're like, yeah, look at that program, it's 20 grand. Whew, that is a lot of money. You know, that is a lot of money, and we're looking for data that supports it. And in actuality, our interpretation is one of many possible interpretations of the situation. And so more than one interpretation could exist and more than one interpretation could be true. And those of you who are familiar with Crucial Conversations, they talk about interpretations as the story we tell ourselves. So some of you may have been telling yourself some story. So let's do a quick exercise as a group, and I want to hear the story you're telling yourself. So find that chat window again, and I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to ask you a question. And when I ask you the question, I want you to just type in the chat the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay? Everyone ready? Give me a yes in the chat if you're ready. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an opinion we create about an event, situation, or experience. Yep. Okay, fabulous. Thank you. All right, so everyone jump in the chat. Give me a yes if you're ready. We're going to tell you a story. You might close your eyes and get ready for the story, and then we're going to jump in the chat. Okay, so here's the story. Let's say you're working on a project and a colleague asks you for some information about your project on Monday morning. Okay, so your colleague sends you an email and says, hey, hey, Jahnavi, can you tell me about, project XYZ that you're working on? And so you're like, oh, okay, yeah, let me tell you about XYZ. And it takes you a little while, right? Because you're got to put together the background and all the other things that you put together the background, you write the email, you make sure it has the right info, it's got the right detail that shows all the stuff you know about this project and also what you're thinking about the future of the project. And so on Tuesday morning, you send the email. This is just, maybe you did it a half an hour ago. And you send the email back. And then it's Tuesday afternoon and your thoughts wander back to that email and you're like, gosh, I thought I did a really good job sending that email to my colleague. Like it was really complete. It was really tight. I loved it. It was a good job. And you're kind of like thinking about that. And then it's the end of the day on Tuesday, and you still haven't gotten a response. And then Tuesday night, you're making dinner and you're like, your thoughts wander back to that email and you're like, gosh, how come How come he hasn't responded? I thought it was pretty good. I wonder what's going on. And then you fast forward to Wednesday, midday, still no response from your colleague. As your thoughts wander to this email and your colleague, you think what? Put it in the chat. What's the story in your head right now about this situation? Did he get it? They're really busy. What else? He's ignoring me. What did I do wrong? I failed at my task. Were they interested? I forgot to hit send. Why did they want this stuff? Did they ask for a reply? Like, are you guys seeing this? This is amazing. I love it. Look at all of these interpretations we have. Look at all these interpretations. They're out sick. They're not online. He didn't really need that information. He doesn't want to tell me I suck. He thinks my stuff sucks, right? Oh, he's stealing my idea. It's really good. And now he's stealing my idea. This is fabulous. Look at all these amazing interpretations of this same story, right? Of this same situation. And how many of you think your story is true? If you think your story is true, just say, I'm right in the chat. Probably not. I'm right. Yes, I could be right. Yes, right, exactly. All of these could be right, right? They're all plausible interpretations of this story, right? And so when we think he's busy, what do we think about being in this organization? You know, how do we feel about being in the organization, and how might we perform in the organization if we think, oh, my colleague's just a little bit busy and that's why they didn't respond? We probably think, oh, no big deal. I'm going to keep working. You know, that's cool. I'm going to keep working, but it's about them. It's not about me. They're not professional. And what if we think, this guy's stealing my ideas? This guy's stealing my ideas. My ideas are brilliant, and now he's presenting to the boss's boss's boss, and he's going to get the promotion, and he's going to get the thing, and all the recognition and all the praise. How do we feel then? We feel neglected. And how might we perform when we feel neglected? It's a plan to destroy me. Why bother? Yeah, exactly. So isn't that crazy? We saw this wide range of interpretations, and so we don't even know. And I love someone wrote in the chat. I'm going to go ask the question, right? I'm going to go ask. I'm going to go get more data. It's fabulous to see the range of interpretations. So interpretations can really take us on a rabbit hole, down a rabbit hole. So I want to share with you some ideas on how to get out of this crazy cycle that's in our mind, okay? And again, we do it by thinking about our thinking. We do it by metacognition. And so here's some magic questions that you can ask yourself, or ask someone else that you see who's got an interpretation about a situation. So what else could be going on? What's another way to look at that? What would another friend or another person's perspective of this situation be? And then what would someone who had the completely opposite view of yours say about the situation? So remember, on my list, I had an apartment that's in our basement that has been vacant for a couple months, and it's making us a little nervous about paying our mortgage, right? And I kind of was telling myself a story that, COVID is making people not want to move. And I'm like, if someone's in an apartment, they're just going to stay put, and it's kind of slowing me down. And I was kind of dragging my feet on listing it again on Zillow and all the other things, and kind of putting it out there. And then actually this morning, I went and got breakfast because I got up early. I went and got breakfast, came back, I was looking at the mail from yesterday, and I have 2 mailers from realtors. And they're saying, in South Boulder, real estate is super hot, and like it's a super hot market. If you want to sell your house, call me today and we'll get it sold. Like, it's wicked hot right now because demand's low. People want to move wherever they want to live versus where they have to live because everyone's working from home, et cetera, or people who can are working from home. And I got an inquiry on Zillow last night from someone who's moving to Colorado from Texas. And she's like, well, I can work from anywhere, so I want to find someplace I love to live. And then I got a call from someone who's like taking a gap year between high school and college. She and a friend want a place to live for 6 months. And I'm like, oh my God, okay, this is data that's kind of counter to my interpretation of the situation, right? My interpretation originally was COVID is making people lock down and not go anywhere and not make changes and not move. And even in the chat, someone shared with us they moved twice since COVID started. So yes, exactly, right? So really interesting that now a different thought is in my head. And if I had gone to ask a realtor about, what do you think my chances are of getting this property rented? You know, their probably thought would be like, oh my God, it's a super hot market. All sorts of people are moving around and this is a great time to have a property available. So once again, you know, thinking about our thinking lets us manage our emotions, right? Because my emotional response is different. I was feeling kind of resigned. I was feeling worried about money. And now I'm like, gosh, there's so much possibility out there. I'm feeling a different emotion and likely we'll get a different outcome. So now we're all going to get a chance to do this together. And this is where we're going to break into triads. So if you're thinking you can't stay on for the next 20 minutes, now might be a good time to drop off, because then your partners won't be alone. So we're going to break you out into triads, and we're going to have 3 people. So triad, right? 3 people. So first we need someone who's going to be the client. And this is someone who's got something on their list that is something not yet achieved, and they think it might be because of an interpretation they're making about the situation. And then we're gonna have a coach, and this is someone who's just gonna actively help that client think about their thinking. Okay, we're trying to think about our thinking here. And I'll give you the magic questions to ask so you don't have to come up with this, but we're just gonna have the coach take that role. And then we're gonna have an observer who just helps the coach stay on task and watches the time. And so the coach is going to ask that person, the client, about the situation. And first, they're going to ask a few questions that capture the thought the client's having, the emotion the client's having, and the action, or maybe it's inaction, because like the emotion is causing them not to do anything. And so we're going to have them clarify that, like the initial thought, emotion, and action. And then we're going to have the coach ask a few questions to challenge the thinking, to get them thinking about their thinking, to identify perhaps a new interpretation, a different interpretation that might lead to a different emotion or feeling, and that might lead to a different action. And if you've got the handout, you can kind of see a little table that has like initial, and then line 2, line 3, line 4, right? So let's see how far we can go with this. So as we do this, and Ashley, I assume you're getting ready to send them into breakouts, the groups of 3, and it could be random. If we do this again, I want to make sure we have some agreements about confidentiality. You're going to look for a volunteer among you and your peers that are in your breakout. So respect the vulnerability of the person who volunteers to be the client, right? Because they're going to share something going on in their life. And keep everything we hear or learn in that situation as confidential. And people are going to be bringing in situations about their boss, their partner, maybe a family member, who knows, right? So you as the coach and the observer have to create this safe space for someone, confidentiality without judgment, okay? Know that we're not going to record the breakouts, so you're not going to be recorded for eternity, so you can be free to share that. We only record the main room. And what we're going to do is, when we come back, I'm going to ask for some volunteers from the observer, as well as the client. So if you go as the client and you want to share your experience, just be ready to do that with the big group, okay? So again, we're kind of going in this cycle here. Ashley, do you mind dropping in the handout in the chat if you can? And we're going in this cycle. We're going to understand the thought, the feeling, and the action that our client is having. And we're really trying to get at, is this an interpretation? And if it's an interpretation, go with it. If it's not an interpretation, it might be an assumption. You know, we can kind of get those mixed up a little bit sometimes, so just go with it. And as a coach, you don't solve or force anything with the client. You just ask them questions about their thinking. And maybe they tell you things and you just repeat it back. So, you know, let's say your client's having a thought about renting an apartment and, you know, you think it's a hot market. You wouldn't be like, well, it's a hot market, you should really not worry about that, right? Because that's like discounting your client and making them feel kind of crappy. We don't want to do that. We just want to say, well, tell me more about what you're thinking, or what would someone else tell you about that situation, and see what they come up with. And so we don't want to tell them what to feel about their situation or what actions to take. We just want to ask them questions and see what comes up. And then once you have that thought, feeling, action for the situation, then move on to these strategies to challenge our interpretations and ask 1 or 2 of those questions and let them identify 1 or 2 possible interpretations. And then if you have time, go into the feelings and the actions that would go along with that. And observers just help them stay on track. So if that makes sense to you, give me a yes in the chat. And if it doesn't make sense to you, give me a question in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing quite a few yeses. All right.
like a quick final summary of here's what you do when you jump into the room might help.
Okay,
too.
thank you. When you jump in the room, you're looking for a client, you're looking for a coach, and you're looking for an observer. Client tells a story. The coach asks questions about the thinking, and the observer manages the time and makes sure the coach stays on track. And what we're trying to do is uncover interpretations and then feelings and then actions. And we start with the first one, and then we challenge the client to come up with a different interpretation of the situation. Okay, we got enough yeses, so at least there'll be one person in each chat room knowing what to do. So Ashley, why don't you send them to the chat room, and we'll give everyone about 6 minutes because I want to make sure we have time to debrief. So 6 minutes in the chat room. Go and be